or not. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. I am back.
Oh my God, you're right, Chris.
Oh, this has gone terribly wrong. I am back, but suddenly I'm turned into right Chris, which is absolutely the wrong way around. But hello to you guys. Let me sort this out. There you go. So that was weird. It's like the whole Ant and Dec switch thing. That was the
let's not make that ever happen again. That was not fun.
Honestly, it's fantastic to be back. I have had, as you know, fallen off my little bike, not a cool motorbike, a bike, and I banged my head, so I had concussion, and I still do, which is weird, and it's a horrible thing, but I'm kind of feeling better to the point where I can now converse without being more of an idiot than I used to be. But it's lovely to be back and to see Chris sat here, and he did amazingly well when I was nursing my head. So thank you, Chris, and I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, I mean, this is so much more fun for me now. I'm relaxed. I came on at the beginning. I was like, oh yeah, this is great. I finished my coffee, just completely relaxed. No problems whatsoever. Last week was horrendous. I never want that to happen again. You are not allowed on a bike.
Well, do you know what? We had 3 guests on last week, and it was horrible to sit here and to watch you guys on the show and all the comments coming in, which, of course, I jumped on the comments myself. But, you know, it's wonderful to be back, and hopefully this means I'm officially on the mend, because I think I am feeling better in the way that, you know, feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So hello to you all in the chat. I miss you guys, and happy Wednesday. Another hour early. I know we're early today. But that's all good. So excited. So, Chris, should we get the Beer Token book promotion done?
We should indeed.
Well, as it was my first day back, and, you know, we're trying to raise awareness for the writing community because it's something we love doing. And, you know, we've got a lot of amazing supporters in this community for the show. So we wanted to give back, as always, as you guys know. So what we're doing to celebrate the end of Indie April, and we do this on Friday as well, is we are doing the beer book promotion token promotion. We're giving them away, really, basically. And today we have chosen someone who was our very first guest on the show, which was a while back now, Chris. Mm-hmm. And that person is Halo Scott, if you know your show. So they're at the bottom. And what we're going to do is show you her website, which has now magically disappeared, because her books are currently free right now, all 4 of them, which is incredible.
So, yeah, I mean, we had obviously Tony came in on Friday, and he was saying the key is free content, getting your work out there so people can read it. And I thought he just meant like a page or a few pages or a little bit of a chapter. And Halo went and did the whole thing for free. So she wrote 4 books, which is over 400,000 words. And then she's gone and done a crazy idea and given them all away for free. So you can get them now. And obviously we've read Edge of the Breach. We had her on the show. We chatted to her about it. And it's a fantastic book. So please, if you're missing a Game of Thrones void in your life, I definitely recommend picking up this section of books because they're absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure you will love them if you're fans of that show.
A lot of you know this, and we've mentioned this before. Halo Scott, we think you set the standard for what an indie author should be like. Your professionalism when it comes to your personality on shows and your website, and this section of books right there beautifully done. It's a craft that you've executed fantastically well, and giving them all away free, which is a crazy thing to do, but they're amazingly well rated. So take the advantage of it right now, because I think they're only free for the rest of this week. Get hold of them right now, and you can see there on the website, they're all there, all in looking very uniform fashion. And if we scroll down, they've got 93 ratings on the first one, and 5 stars for the rest. There was 3 books. And customers also bought Ross Young, show person, Matt Walowaski, one of our previous guests, Christopher Hooley, Matt
I don't know who
Adcock,
that guy is, but he doesn't sound very good.
Mario, all of these people that we know, and that's me there as well. So good taste, clearly. So thank you guys, and support the authors that support the show. Well done, Halo. Oh yeah, Chris, sorry. It's been a while. I know, I'm a bit rusty.
There it is. Beautiful.
Oh, you guys, there's Halo Scott. Hello. She's sacrificing goats again. Okay, so Chris, should we get our guest on? Because I'm excited. I missed this, and I'm ready to chat. Are you?
I'm super excited about having this guest on. So yeah, without further ado, let's get her on.
Fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Sarah Pearse. Hello.
Hello.
So Pearse is Priest, isn't it? I'm glad to be back. I'm going to blame that on the concussion. Blame it on the concussion. Right. Hello. How are you doing?
You've got a good excuse now then. Blame it on the concussion. I like this.
I used to do exactly that before I hit my head. So it makes no difference. But now I do now have an excuse.
Legitimately use that. Yeah.
I can. Hello. Welcome to the show. And how are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you. And thank you for having me on.
Everyone normally takes the mick out of me for blushing. But right now, I think Chris Hooley is the blushing person.
I'm sorry, Chris. They're like, it's literally the first thing you said back in a new show.
It's how I roll.
Brilliant. Sorry, Sarah. Sorry, that's really impressive. But it was hilarious.
So where are you coming from, Sarah? Whereabouts are you in the world?
I'm in Torquay in South Devon, so I'm kind of the very far southwest. Not as far as Cornwall, but getting close.
Very nice. I like to go down that way quite often when restrictions allow.
I know.
Yeah, very nice.
It's a shame. I've had lots of people kind of on Instagram saying, I want to go down to the beach, but hopefully now everything's opening up again so people can travel and yeah.
Well, amazingly, the pubs in Wales have reopened, but I can't go because of my head. So it's like torture all over again. So what we love to do at the start of the show with every guest that comes on here is really dig into the history of an author, whether they've been doing this for 30 years or they recently brought books out for the first time, or they're even just getting into writing. So Sarah, can we look into the reasons why writing was an inspiration for your life in the first place?
Yeah, so I think probably for me it started as a child. I think it's probably quite normal for authors to say they were big readers, but I was kind of 4 or 5 and I was one of the kids that went to the library with a massive sort of stack of books and kind of would basically beg my mum to put books on her card as well. And I was just a book nerd, and I actually, my mum found something a few months ago with me kind of saying I want to be a book writer. I hadn't quite learned the word author. From when I think, I was about 5. So, it's always been a sort of lifelong passion. And my uni degree, I did English and creative writing at Warwick, and it was kind of like the first year of the degree course. And then I kind of went away, as my tutor advised. I don't think I had loads to say at that point. I was kind of writing, working on the craft, but I don't think I'd sort of found my big idea. And it was really kind of, he basically advised, go away, live life, meet people, do lots of different jobs, kind of experience life. And kind of I did. So I moved to Switzerland in my sort of 20s. And it was there I kind of wrote my first short story, which was published, which was great. And then, when I had my daughters and was on maternity leave, I started sort of writing more short fiction. And that was a really sort of big apprenticeship for me. And I have to say, probably where I kind of learn everything I've put into sort of practice in the novel. It's a completely different medium, but I think that kind of keeping the prose quite honed down, that's clarity of thought and idea, which you have to do in a short story. That was sort of where it all kicked off. And then from the short fiction, I then obviously went on to the novel. But this one wasn't my first novel. So, yeah.
Interesting. I mean, being a book, wanting to write books and trying to learn the whole procedures and then growing into that, was moving to Switzerland a big distraction, or was it something that then actually influenced your writing even more?
Yeah, Switzerland, I think as a whole, I found it just quite inspiring. I'm from the coast and I just love being outside and in nature. And I've always found that hugely inspiring. If I look back at my short fiction, the sea and water kind of weaves its way into all of my sort of work. And I think when I was in Switzerland, I had the sort of seed of an idea just around setting a book there. I found something about the mountains, from being by the coast and having that horizon and being able to look out. I always found that the mountain environment quite claustrophobic in a weird kind of way. And I think, it's not only obviously being at altitude, which can be a bit odd at times anyway, but just that whole kind of looming sort of presence of the mountain. And I thought it would be kind of a great place for fiction. But it wasn't really until I sort of read the article about sanatoriums and kind of dug into it there did I get the kind of full idea. So it was probably ticking away in the background. But everywhere I've sort of lived, I've kind of lived all over the UK a little bit, from Warwick to Surrey, has kind of influenced my work. And I think also then everyone you meet as well sort of feeds into that.
Yeah, I think life experience is a massive influence and help when people need to start writing. And often if you've learned the craft of writing through, say, university or studied the art, then sometimes it's, the way, but it's difficult to come up with those sort of ideas and the experiences to lean on those. Whereas same, it goes the other way. So it's good to have those experiences in life to lean on for your creativity.
Yeah, and I think actually when you made a good point kind of about the craft side of it, I think very much on my degree course, and a few people have said that to me kind of around their sort of creative writing courses they've taken. The only thing I don't think I did kind of work on, I would say, during that degree course is plotting. I think that's something I've really sort of had to dig into on my own, be it kind of like looking through books I've loved and trying to sort of work out why, to looking at stuff online. That was something I didn't think there was too much focus on, which is a shame, because I think story is the sort of underpinning for everything, really. But
So Sarah, from what you're saying, the sort of transition for you from going from somebody who studies writing and enjoys writing in an academic setting to then taking writing a bit more seriously as your sort of passion came when you gave birth and was on maternity leave. Now, I've got a small child at the minute, and I couldn't think of anything worse than trying to write a short story and manage the babies or write a novel in that sense. So what do you think drew you to writing at that moment of your life, which is probably the most chaotic moment you're going to have?
Yeah, a few people have said that actually, and said that's quite an interesting. You've got a crying baby, trying to get them to sleep. But I'd have to say, once my daughter was into a routine, which took a while, and she had like a long lunchtime nap, and I kind of used that time to write. And I have to say, I think when I was working, and I was working full time, more or less from when I left uni, kind of paying off student debt, all that kind of thing. So I hadn't really had the headspace, and it sounds strange with a baby, but I think my brain was finally free of every other distraction. I didn't have to answer emails. I could finally think creatively. And I just think the whole experience, I had quite a traumatic birth as well. The whole sort of general experience just sort of, I just found quite inspiring. And I wanted to carve out that sort of space for me again. I think when you have a child, it kind of consumes you. And I think there was a little bit of rebellion of, I am something beyond this. And I was so used to sort of working hard. I kind of, just wanted a little bit of intellectual me time. And I honestly had no idea I would get anything published. With the short fiction, it was kind of a case of trial and error. I experimented with a few things and then kind of honed it. And when I finally got success, and it was a magazine called Dyslexia, and I had my first piece of short fiction published in there, it was kind of a bit of a eureka moment. I thought, wow, someone's judged this. It was Sarah Dunn had judged it, and she'd kind of commented about the writing and the style, and I thought, I could really make a go of this. But it is a strange thing when you have a child. You think, actually, I won't have the time, but I use the nap time creatively.
That's very unselfish to use the nap time in a constructive way. I think most people would be trying to really cling on to that.
Exactly.
So what drew you to writing short stories first then? Because, some people, if they think, oh, I really want to be a writer, I've got this idea for a novel, I'm going to write a novel. And some people who have done both say that the short story aspect is actually harder than writing a novel, because obviously you've got more scope to work with. So why do you think you were drawn to that element first?
Well, first of all, I kind of liked reading short stories. And for me, it was kind of a way in, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I knew at that stage, as quite rightly you said, when you have a young child, time's kind of limited. But I thought it was something where I could kind of get to the end. I think it was really important to have something that I could kind of tick off and achieve. My worry I did think about sort of starting a novel, but I don't know whether I'd have become discouraged if I hadn't been able to progress. Whereas with a short story, don't get me wrong, some of them would take kind of months months. And yeah, it wasn't an easy process by any means, but I think I had like a very much a beginning and a middle and end of the actual process as well as the story. So I would send them off, and I kept kind of a spreadsheet, a very kind of loose spreadsheet of what I'd finished and that kind of thing, and ticked off and sent. And I kind of had a bit of order back in my life again via that. And yeah, it's a sense of achievement that with the novel, I think it could have just perhaps been a little open-ended. And then via Writing Magazine, they have various short story competitions, and obviously they give you a deadline, and you have a monthly deadline for them. And I think having that, just as I said, gave me the focus. And they would often, I paid for a few critiques of those short stories, and that was really great, hearing what they had to say about the sort of form, the language. And yeah, it felt like something achievable.
It's a different thing writing your first kind of works, which would have been your short stories at that time, and then moving on to a novel which you kind of plotted and dedicated to. So how different was the writing experience for you, and did your techniques kind of change a lot at that time?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I'd been writing the short stories, I kind of written more sort of commercially, and then I'd written sort of slightly more literary style. And I think I learned a huge amount from both. And I think with the more sort of commercial stories, I could think the idea of the sort of plot and the payoff almost, I suppose, within that was really helpful with going into the novel. But the actual sort of narrative structure felt overwhelming. I tackled it, and as I said, I sort of pulled apart books I'd loved reading and tried to sort of work out why. But yeah, it was a huge task, and I think that plotting process for me, definitely with the first one, was a lot looser than with the second, which is what would become the Sanatorium. So yeah, it's hugely different.
So Sarah, we've just touched on the Sanatorium, and obviously for people watching now, normally we do a little section where we just tell us a little bit about the book, because obviously it's doing fantastically well at the minute, right up there in the bestsellers list. But if somebody is watching that hasn't heard of it or seen it anywhere, what is it about?
Yeah, so the Sanatorium, as the title suggests, is set in an old sanatorium in the Swiss Alps. It's actually in the present day a luxury hotel called Le Sommet. But yeah, they've transformed this old abandoned sanatorium into a very kind of clinical, minimalist sort of luxury hotel. And you have Elin, who's our British detective, Elin Warner, who travels to the hotel for her brother's sort of engagement party. But I think you feel as soon as she gets to the hotel, quite uneasy. She's sort of very thrown off by the architecture. Her boyfriend, Will, who's with her, is sort of super enthusiastic, finds it really interesting, but for her, she kind of almost feels that energy of the past of the building and that sort of clinical history. And almost as soon as she arrives, within a day, her kind of fears are sort of proven to be correct. Isaac's fiancée Laure goes missing, and she's basically has to investigate. They're cut off, there's avalanches, a huge sort of massive snowstorm, and the Swiss police kind of help her out via phone, but it's really up to her and her alone to solve the case. And then you have lots more sort of goings on. Other people go missing, body count starts piling up. So yeah, Ellen's sort of up against it from the start.
Sounds fantastic. And it gives, straight off the bat, when you describe it that way, it sounds, the Shining kind of vibe comes up along. Is that kind of something that was an influence, perhaps?
It wasn't actually, and it sounds terrible. I haven't actually read The Shining, and so a few people have said, "Oh, tell me." And I'm afraid, I'm sure there are parallels, but yeah, I don't. I know from the building, people have said the front cover, particularly the US front cover, gave them The Shining vibes, but it wasn't an inspiration for the book.
I think it's just the isolation in the snow. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
That was really basically all it was, and the fact that strange ongoings were happening. But sorry, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I want to read it now, though.
I was going to say I've read a few books recently where the building is integral to the story and almost is almost like a character in itself. So how, as from a writer's perspective, how do you do that? How do you make the building an integral part and make that uneasiness and that vibe clear to the reader? Because obviously we have a lot of authors and writers that watch the show that are desperate for tips, obviously from the best. So if you had to give a tip for writing a good setting and making that setting come to life, what would your tips be?
Yeah, I think I was pretty much the same thing, because when I read the initial article about the sort of sanatorium and saw the photograph of the building, I really immediately wanted the sort of it to become that character. But I think it actually developed even further as I was writing. And I think when you're sort of involved in the story, one book actually, I don't know if you've read, is Sarah Walter's The Little Stranger, where you have like the hall, Hundreds Hall. It's kind of a huge building, which, yeah, it's kind of decaying. When you sort of meet, it sounds strange because I'm describing it as a character now, when you meet the house in the book, you really feel the sort of presence, not necessarily a supernatural presence, but a sort of presence of sort of the energies of the people who've lived there. And I think that's something that I think when you're describing the building, if you're able to describe the past of the building, you can automatically weave in that sense of menace, because I think it's quite powerful in people's imaginations if you can suggest that. But I think for the key in the sanatorium was the sort of clinical aspects and the sort of coldness in a way, which I think I was helped because it was sort of mirroring the external landscape. So you had all that snow, and I could kind of draw on that. But yeah, I think it was very much sort of pulling on the parallels of the past of within the building and highlighting that. So I think when you then go on to Elin's reaction to the building, which I think is key, I think you have to have your characters responding to that building, because Elin had that knowledge of the past sort of within her. She's reading into everything she sees. And I think if you can sort of kind of manifest sort of negative, malevolent energy within the actual building, not just the bones of the building, so your description, but almost elements within that building. So I have sort of glass boxes with, you know, various macabre elements in them. If you can have various elements and see that character's response to them, that's quite powerful, because I think you almost need your character's response to sort of mirror the reader. And I think if you aren't getting them to feel how that character's feeling, Elin immediately feels, oh my gosh, I really don't like this place. And she's getting fear, you know, you see her physical description, her heart rate's increasing, everything Elin is feeling. I think then as the reader you start to feel too. So I think it's a combo of kind of the physical description of the building as sort of narration, but then also seeing your characters sort of viscerally reacting to that. I think it's the two.
Wow.
So when you wrote this book, it sounds absolutely amazing, which I definitely need to get my hands on. And I know Chris has, and I'm very jealous right now. But when you wrote this book, did you have any sort of expectation of how well this book would do? I mean, you know, it's done fantastic well in the charts, and it was Reese Witherspoon club pick as well. Did you have any expectation that would be a thing when you started writing?
No, I genuinely, and obviously when I started writing, I had no deadline and was just doing it in quite a relaxed way. I just genuinely wanted to get the book published. And I think probably any aspiring author would just say, almost, I could have done it for free. Don't tell my publisher. But no, it was kind of very much just having that book published. That was the goal. And I genuinely have been blown away and kind of humbled and grateful by sort of how it's been received by people. It's just every dream and then some. And I think in a way, not having expectations has kind of made it even sweeter. I'm kind of now just absorbing it all and amazed.
So when you'd finished the book, and obviously you were looking to get to pitch it and get an agent and then get a publisher, what was that process like for you? Because obviously you've got your finished article, you've got your couple of kids running around now as well, probably adding to the chaos. And obviously you just said then that you didn't have any expectations. So how was that whole process, and what was it like going into it?
Yeah, I mean, I probably, similar to a lot of authors, this book wasn't the first book I kind of got my agent with. So I'd actually sent in my first novel, which is sort of tucked away in the drawer as they are now. And yeah, I'd worked on that one. And so the Sanatorium was like my second book. So I'd already had a bit of an experience of the sort of slightly bruising process of the book going out on submission, getting feedback, nearly there, but not quite, etc. So yeah, I was kind of almost had my armor on for the second book. So when the Sanatorium went out, luckily enough, I got feedback within, just a couple of weeks saying sort of from my agent, the feedback's really positive. It's kind of looking good. And then, yeah, I think it was just about 2 weeks I had the offer from the publisher. So, it was amazing. It was a very sort of quick process with the second one, which was thankful because, I don't know how to have survived.
It's something that I want to approach with my next book. And it's something I'm quite fearful of, that when I've spoken to a lot of people recently on the show that have done this, but when you send this book out and you finally get, signed, and then you think you've got this polished as best as you can, and then you send it out and they come back with a world of criticism. I'm not sure I can deal with that, but how do you approach that? And how did you feel if that is something that happened to you?
Yeah, I'll be honest, with the first book, I think you're right. I think you almost build up in your mind in a way that you have the hurdles, don't you, of kind of finishing the manuscript, hurdle 1, hurdle 2, sending it out and kind of, do you get any responses? And then sort of hurdle 3, even when you get the agent, there's another thing to jump again. It might not actually get taken on by a publisher. So yeah, I think with the first, I was kind of quite emotional about the whole process. But I think by the second book, I was a little bit more guarded in a way about the feelings. I think I'd learnt by that stage not to take it personally. And I also think probably my sort of process as a whole, I think why the short story element was really good, that had also sort of prepared me for rejection. With my short stories, I'd sent them out quite widely, and then it was quite hit and miss as to which ones would get published or ever placed in anything. And I kind of learned in a way not to take it too personally, which is really hard because it's kind of your heart and soul into that. But yeah, definitely the first book is a different thing again. And it's, yeah, you just have to kind of try as much as you can to maintain a sense of it's not your book, it's kind of just not right for that person, though it's easier said than done.
Definitely. I mean, being an author, it doesn't matter if you've sold 1 million books or one, there's always a 1-star review somewhere.
Exactly.
So you've got to have that skin, whether you're just starting out or you've been in the game for 30 years. So you mentioned before we came on air that you're kind of working on book number 2 now. Or technically more than that. So how is this how well this book has been received now, has that added extra pressure to how you feel you want to write your book now?
It has, to a certain degree, in the sense that you kind of think, well, if that book was so successful, do you kind of have to stick to that similar sort of formula? But in some ways, no. I think I'm probably a bit more confident now in what people have liked about the writing. And I think this idea, I probably had sort of the bones of it even before I was writing The Sanatorium in a way. I kind of knew I wanted to set a book. It's actually local to sort of me here. So I have sort of confidence in the setting. But no, there's definitely a sort of more of a sense of expectation. Whereas with the first one, it was kind of like you didn't even know really if anyone would read it. So yeah, it's a little bit different.
It's amazing. Okay, so sorry, Chris.
We have some staple questions, but I was just going to ask another question before we go into that.
Yeah.
This kind of loosely linked. So with the first book then, obviously before the Sanatorium, sorry.
Yeah.
I was literally just to swallow some more. Don't
worry, I do time.
How much of that did you take on board? Because obviously you got really close to the line with having the agent accept it, agent sending it out on your behalf, almost getting there. Did you take everything on board and then put that into book 2, or did you want to do something completely different? Like how close is that first book that you ever wrote to obviously the books that you've done now?
There are elements there, but I think, again, coming back to kind of the thing I mentioned before around plot, I think with that first book, it was almost an outpouring of everything I thought I wanted in a novel. And I don't think I had the plotting there in the story. So if I kind of looked back through the feedback, a similar thing would be around sort of pacing and the sort of where the story was going. And I think I really didn't have that sort of structure fixed. For me now, I'm a bit of a sort of passionate advocate of having that structure. And I know that whole pantser versus plotter thing, but I think for me, it was a game changer for the second book, having that idea of plotting and knowing where I wanted the book to go. I think with the first one, I was overwriting, and I just didn't have those sort of fixed points in the narrative that I knew I kind of almost needed to hit. And then when I approached the Sanatorium, I knew I wanted something a lot pacier. I knew I wanted, I just knew the certain elements I wanted there. So that was hugely different between book 1 and book 2. I kind of didn't want to almost go through the experience of sort of wasting hours at my desk, which I didn't have to with that second book.
And did that reflect in your writing as well? Obviously you said you were in a much pacier book. Did you find that you wrote it a lot quicker as well as a result, because you were sort of aiming towards that pacey punch? Sort of finish each chapter, let's say. Yeah,
definitely. And I also think I probably had more fun writing The Sanatorium, actually. And I think that's something that's not always shouted about. I think it can come across to the reader. If you've really enjoyed the scenes, I was kind of like, what kind of things do I like to read for fun? And why do I like them? I was quite clinical about it. And I think then when I wrote the actual book, I included scenes that I really enjoyed writing and was quite I was passionate about the idea, for one, which was key. And then, the actual scenes within that book, the things that are propelling the book forward, I really enjoyed writing. And it's not to say I didn't with the first book, but I think I thought about it a little bit more before I sort of started typing, which was quite different. I didn't kind of think, I'll sit there and let it flow. I kind of thought, right, I want to do this, I want to do that. And the book kind of then worked for me in a way that the first one didn't.
I just want to, you mentioned about how the story, kind of grabbed your attention, and that you came across maybe an article or you found out about the building. That's something one of our guests, Stu Taunton, a while back, he had a great story, and it was based on history that he'd discovered. I really like the idea of doing that as a writer, finding some sort of historical story or building and then working on it. But there's perhaps many sort of different stories people have seen across the years, but what made you, what jumped out at you that grabbed you so much that you needed to write about this building in particular?
Yeah, for me, I have probably a bit of a nerdish obsession with kind of sort of old abandoned buildings. I just love the idea of creepy buildings. And I watched quite a lot of, there's something on YouTube called The Proper People. They're also on Instagram, where they kind of break into abandoned buildings and explore them. So I've always just loved this whole idea of sort of abandoned buildings, and the idea that, the past is sort of lingering, that energy still there. And when I read the article about, it was basically saying a lot of these sanatoriums in the Alps were converted into hotels, and that just captured my imagination of how would you feel to stay somewhere where so many people had died, quite honestly, and that being a kind of luxury hotel, and what would be lingering. And I think you're right in kind of saying, if you found an idea that grabs you, for me, it was just endlessly fascinating. So in a way, the whole time I was writing that book, I was Googling and I was finding more and more things out, and I was interested in my own story, which sounds really weird because obviously you have to be, but almost the backstory. So things that didn't go into the book, I was, just so drawn to. There were so many things I thought, oh my gosh, not all of it made it into the book. There's the kind of creepier elements of the old sanatorium, but I kind of scrapbooked, pulled things out. But I think if you're passionate about that and can maintain that throughout the story, that will come across to the reader. I think you've got to be excited to sit down and tell that story.
I'm with you 100% on that. I absolutely love, especially when it comes to sort of World War II era, all the old buildings that remain, and they do have a sense of sort of just this aura around them, that something still feels connected. And I'm not sure what it is, but I agree 100% with you on that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard, there's a theory, isn't there? I think it's like a stone tape theory. The idea that kind of stone, whether it's used within a building or kind of standing stones, hold the energy of what went on, and you could hear it. And I mean, I'm sure, I don't know what the science of it, but I just love that idea.
So Sarah, with obviously, would you be tempted to go back, maybe do a prequel? Because obviously, if you're doing an ancient building, you're exploring an ancient building, there's obviously an awful lot of history there. And obviously, with the success that this book's had, would you be tempted to maybe plant some earlier seeds and, explore that aspect of things?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in a way I toyed with at the beginning having some kind of scenes from the past, but I think with my learnings from sort of the first book, I kind of wanted to keep that pace up. And I think one of the things someone sort of mentioned in this book, they like the sort of linear narrative. They like the fact there isn't a time slip. So I think there's definitely room. You could potentially do that with a prequel where you're kind of giving it, again, you could make that a linear narrative and you're not weaving the two. So yeah, definitely. There's loads more I wanted to say really, but you only really get the old sanatorium at the very beginning of the book. But I mean, you obviously get parts later on, but maybe one day I'd like to.
Brilliant.
So we have some staple questions. Go on, Chris.
Sorry, Chris, just before we do that, Danielle on the chat said the Lizzie Borden house in Massachusetts is a bed and breakfast, which has always freaked me out. Please tell us why, because I'm not sure why that is, but I'm intrigued now, so let us know.
I'm guessing it's serial killer related, maybe. It sounds like a B&B that used to be the home of serial killers, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's I mean, a few people have told me stories about kind of definitely ones in the UK, kind of prisons that have been turned into flats and hotels. Oh, yeah, not for me.
So the first staple question that we have, Sarah, is if you could take any character from fiction and have a crack at the character, and we mean make them your own, write them into a story. It's definitely been interpreted two different ways. You can answer the other way if you want to. I can't remember who did it. Might have been Sarah Pimborough. But if you could make that character your own and have them either included into one of your own stories or create an entirely new story with the same character, which character would that be and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think probably one of my favourite characters in any book, and it's probably quite a controversial one because I know not everybody likes him, is Harry Hula in the Joe Nesbo series. I find him endlessly interesting. I think Joe Nesbo's kind of written him in quite an uncompromising way. There's lots to dislike about him, but he's got quite an emotional side. And I think I'd like to explore that further. One of Joe Nesbo's book, a standalone, got it right next to me, is called The Kingdom. And that came out last year. And he's written it in quite a different way. It's a bit more of a kind of slower burn. And I'd quite like to do that with Harry Hula. I'd quite like to see him before he joined the force and explore him in that way. He's kind of my book crush in a way.
That's a brilliant answer. I love that.
It's very good. Just before we move on to the next part, I'll explain the answer. Apparently, Lizzie Brogden, or Broden, killed her parents with an axe. It's an old story, but apparently not known globally. Apparently not. But interesting, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd be staying at that B&B.
I don't know. It'd be interesting. Okay, so the second one of those questions is kind of along the same lines, but it's basically if you could change the end to any story, what ending would you change and why? And perhaps what would you do with that ending?
Ooh, ending of a story. I don't know. I think you've thrown me on that one.
It is a tough one, and if you're struggling, we can open up to TV and film as well. If you struggle with that,
yeah, that's a really. I don't know actually. Yeah,
you can pass.
I'm going to pass on that one. I think.
Pass. Okay.
sorry to disappoint.
No worries.
And this is kind of like a loose link now because somebody's died with an axe, Lizzie Borden's parents. But our question is, if you could resurrect any author that is dead, do a collaboration with them, write a novel with them, on the condition that you then had to kill them. Which author would you pick and how would you kill them?
Oh gosh. I actually answered a similar question about kind of which author would you like to have kind of dinner with, and this is really bad. So I can go. One of Agatha Christie is my go-to. I'd have dinner with, but I can't imagine killing her. But it would probably have to be a poison to kind of link in with her stories. So I don't think I could. I think I'd bottle it at the last minute.
It's an interesting way. I mean, poison is not always the cleanest. Deaths if you look at some kind of TV stories. I watched there was a documentary the other day about Agatha Christie and her using poisons, and she was quite an expert because she'd worked in a hospital, and so she used them. It was a huge number of times throughout the books, and she was quite accurate. I think she kind of got plaudits for how she used the poisons within the story. But I don't know whether it would necessarily be the quick, seamless death. You see, it's a bit too close, too much knowledge there. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean that does add a whole new level to her stories now. Yeah. Definitely knowing that you're like, whoa, did she practice this?
How much did she know inside knowledge?
No, but when you hear about the kind of when she kind of sort of faked her own disappearance, there was quite a lot. There's so much fascinating stuff about her life story. I'd love to discuss.
Right, what we're going to do now is we're going to introduce a new family member, which is what we do from the world of Twitter, which is where we primarily do our things. If you're listening on the podcast or watching this back, that's where we do our business. And someone that's followed us recently that may need a bit of a boost, we kind of give them that boost. And what we do is we play a really weird video, and then we'll let you choose a GIF to send them. And that is a GIF, animated media GIF, not a gift.
Not a gift, I was thinking that.
It's not the first time, but we'll play this and we'll get on to that. Yeah, it was the Ian Rankin show. Of all the guests we've had on the show, Ian Rankin actually sent someone a physical gift after that.
I love that.
Endearing and embarrassing at the same time, but we loved it. So today's new family member is Isaac Newborn, which is a fantastic name. And I'm just an addicted writer, a passionate one. And he's got one follower.
Oh, I'm going to follow you, Isaac.
Isaac, come on, let's follow Isaac, because Isaac's a fantastic name. And
this could backfire though, Chris, because I remember when we had one person and they had 8 followers, and then we inundated them with stuff, and then they never went back on Twitter. from what I could see. So I hope this doesn't work.
Perhaps we need a welcoming gift for those with really small numbers of followers.
I love that. They never came on Twitter. They never re-emerged.
No, they were like,
they never came
those crazy people.
So Sarah, what gift are we going to send them? And we've had everything you can imagine, from dragons to dry shampoo. I can't even remember what we've had. Cats. It's been crazy ideas, but it can be any subject you want.
Oh gosh, I think it would have to be something. Oh, is it wrong to say something scary?
No.
It would probably be some kind of a ghost gif, I think. Could it be a dancing ghost gif?
A dancing ghost.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're watching this
with anything, that kind of dancey moves.
If you're watching this live, if you're watching it back, or you're watching or listening to it on the podcast, Isaac Newborn, which is at Isaac ISAAKNEWBORN, Isaac Newborn. Go on Twitter if you're on Twitter and send this person
charged. I want to look now.
A dancing ghost.
Dancing
ghost.
Gosh, that's a different one. A break dancing ghost.
There you go. So, Sarah, when people are doing that on the show right now, we normally ask, what's a good inspiration of an author for you? But I want to ask, what is your favorite book on that bookshelf, or possibly favorite cover on that bookshelf? Because you've got a great bookshelf next to you.
Yeah. Favorite cover. Loads of these books are my favorite. I'd probably say, actually, I've got another stack over here that I like. Oh God, I can't choose between them all. There's so many.
Well, you can. We'll go back to the original question. An author that inspires you.
I do love Joe Nesbo's. I probably sound like a Nesbo nerd. I don't know whether that's a thing, but I do love The Kingdom, actually. And then going for short stories, actually, interestingly, I do have one on my pile next to me. I do love a cloth bound book, and I have a Waterstones short story analogy read, which I love. I just love the feel. Yeah, really nice pages as well. The paper. Sorry. But yeah, that's another favourite.
They used to have, old classics that were like sewn spines, didn't they? Really textured book covers.
Yeah, I inherited a few of the kind of old, the Observer books where you could look at the page quality and the covers are just gorgeous. Yeah.
Wow.
So, Sarah, is there any short stories you'd recommend? Because we've had a few guests come on now saying they're really quite big fans of short stories and recommended some brilliant ones. So, is there any in particular that you'd recommend?
Yeah, one short story I love is by a lady called Helen Simpson, and it's called Up at the Villa. And I read it kind of. Well, it's slightly different. She's probably at a slightly different stage when she wrote the story, but she just captures something kind of beautiful in the story. And I think that's what short fiction does so well. It allows you almost just to capture an emotion, quite similar to a poem in that way. And she's a new mum, and she's at this villa with her husband, and they've got a new baby that's kind of crying. And she notices some teenagers watching them. And she kind of sort of is lamenting her sort of lost youth and kind of, in a way, the new commitment she has with the baby. And yeah, it's just perfect language. And I'd say the perfect short story, a big inspiration for me.
Wow. It's fantastic. Right. What we're going to do, if you have questions for Sarah, for me, or for Chris, left Chris, right Chris, or for the whole show, they can be anything from the writing to anything you want to ask within reason. Now is the time to send them in, and we will ask on the show live if they are appropriate enough. And our limit is quite fast. So please send them in now, and we will get asking those questions. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask the questions now that we've had in, and if we haven't had many, we're going to give you some random ones that we've used over the past, which is quite interesting because there are some bizarre ones. In fact, what we'll do is we'll start off.
We do have a question there, Chris, that just creeped in a little bit before from Halo.
It is from Halo Scott, which is our sponsor for tonight's show. Please buy those books. Creepiest real life experience, which is very fitting for this kind of story, I guess.
Yeah, probably. It sounds really strange being in my own home, which is my kind of comfort space. But we basically bought the house after an elderly man had died in the house, which we know he died in the house. We were told the story, which wasn't maybe a great story to say from the estate agent. But yeah, we know he kind of smoked quite heavily and smoked a pipe. And obviously the house has been painted, we've kind of made it new, but I will be sitting sometimes on my own. I get a very, very strong smell of pipe smoke, and it is so eerie. It's a very overwhelming, it kind of almost comes as like a gust. I'll smell it and then it kind of passes through. And I have to say, if my husband isn't around, I will then actually come upstairs. I don't know whether it's not a particularly malevolent feeling, but it is definitely very creepy. Yeah, it taps into my sort of idea of past energies living within a building. So yeah, probably my creepiest. I'm probably too scared to kind of go out. When I see people exploring abandoned buildings, I kind of don't think I could do it. I like watching them, but don't think I'd ever do anything like that.
It's very interesting. There is in our house right now, often when we return to the house, not often, but sometimes that the kids and my wife, and they kind of say like, it smells like their granddad who's passed has been here, which is weird. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so yeah. And for me, it's not that bonfire smell that you think, oh, something could be coming in from outside, the windows are closed, and it's just that overwhelming kind of tobacco smell of a pipe. So yeah. Very. I
mean, a pipe smell is very unique as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. I know. I love these sort of stories, and there's people on the chat that Anya that just commented, for example, and work with tarot cards and things like that. So I am someone who likes these experiences, kind of like yourself, in the buildings. But do you believe that there is more to life than what we are right now?
Yeah, I am a big believer in the idea of something. I don't think I necessarily know what it is, but the idea of going back to that kind of energy thing, I do think there is something beyond. I can't, the more I kind of loop things around in my head, the more I believe that. And I do love the idea that energy is there, as scary as it may seem. I just think, that idea of the soul, I think there's so much you don't know about the brain as well. And I did read an article actually from a sort of brain surgeon, and they were saying we really know so little about how the brain works. So that collective consciousness, I don't know.
I mean, that's
so
really
obviously you've mentioned like the academic reading, and you've mentioned the research there in terms of the brain and all the research you did when you were writing as well. Is that something that you do for pleasure? Is that like something that you do whilst reading or whilst writing? Like, how do you sort of can't I can't even get the words out now. Can't mentalize? I'm getting it wrong now, aren't I?
Yeah, no.
The different section. Yeah. How do you do that? How are you like, I'm only going to read non-fiction research stuff when I'm writing, or is that something that you'll read for pleasure?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good question about kind of what you read when writing. I think sometimes if I'm reading fiction, it doesn't always kind of work when I'm writing. I think whether you adopt either the style or, I need to kind of be free of fiction. I very much read books kind of in downtime, unless it's a very different genre. I definitely don't read kind of thrillers while I'm writing. And my research when I'm writing, I kind of dip in and out. So if I can find articles online, there was a book for the sanatorium. I found an article online. It was amazing, actually. It was just purely about researching Swiss sanatoria and the idea that women were kind of institutionalized in these buildings. I found a very brief, you kind of get the clipping of an article, and then I went and ordered the book online, and the book went into loads of detail. It had original letters from women kind of institutionalized in the building, and I found loads more. So it's quite an organic thing. If I find something I'm interested in, I'll click and then order or read online at the time. And I think non-fiction can take you to kind of, definitely for me, when I'm researching, I will just type in quite random things like scary, I don't know, you could say scariest building in X, and the things you come up with, I kind of go down rabbit holes, which I love.
So Sarah, on that search history element, what in your search history over the past, let's say, week or so would get you in trouble?
Oh, I don't know, actually. Nothing, I don't think, is my innocent answer.
I'm going to reverse that question to you, Chris.
Reverse the question. No, probably if anyone did look, I have looked up a few things, like without giving do I say that book too? Without giving too much away, but kind of definite crime scene stuff. A few of the things I've looked up about what injury would you get if you did X to someone? Yeah, probably not great.
I think for the second time, only the second time in our entire streaming show history, we've had a block comment from someone. So Anya, thank you so much.
That was me, mate. I blocked it as soon as I saw the name. I was like, bye.
Anya, what's this?
we've had, obviously, because the comments come in live and we're live on Twitter and
Right.
like Facebook and stuff like that across. Sometimes you get some of society's trolls. They come out and they say stuff. So one time we had Samantha Shannon on the show, and the interview was going really well. And then we had someone who will forever be known now as Mr. Floppy come on and ask a very inappropriate question. But
he won't forever be known as that was his name on the thing.
All right, that was his name.
That was his actual handle thing.
Yeah. So obviously that raised alarm bells. And the person that we blocked for today's show, as soon as I saw the name, I was like, "Yep, bye."
Well,
was this a regular occurrence?
No, this is the second time it's ever happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah,
privileged. Anyway, I thought our moderator had been called into action, but apparently it was Chris. So well done to you. Okay, so our moderator, in fact, has asked a question. Writing question: what do you do when the words won't come? In other words, how do you combat writer's block?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I think for me at the moment, I kind of experienced that when I was sort of finishing the first draft of the new book, because I think less a writer's block, kind of more fatigue. I'd written non-stop. So from having the book accepted and then going through the edit process for both the UK and the US, which was quite extensive, I kind of reached the stage where I didn't really want to write anymore, which sounds awful, but I think I hadn't had a break, and I'd lost that kind of desire to sit down at the desk. So for me, writer's block is kind of just taking time away from the computer, and I do my best thinking when I'm outside, active and doing other stuff. And I think it's actually key to take breaks when you feel like things aren't working. I know some people say kind of plow through. For me, it's really important to take time away, and I think you're constantly thinking when you have that idea for your book. For me, I'm constantly thinking about it, kind of brewing up ideas for twists, turns within the narrative, and taking time away is key. So don't be afraid to sort of step away and do something else entirely.
What's that?
Just as someone who lives by the sea, and I kind of do as well, but I've never taken advantage of this, and especially not, I haven't got a laptop on these sort of things. So, but have you ever? A lot of people have a certain writing space that they really enjoy doing that isn't the usual writing space. So perhaps a coffee shop window or a beach. Have you ever done anything like that?
Yeah, no, I actually have a kind of little beach hut. So I have been known to take my laptop into the beach hut, and it's kind of big enough. It's only really for me, where I could sit on the chair if it's kind of bad weather and then kind of tap away there. Because I find huge inspiration in just being outside. And then also randomly is when my husband is driving and I'm next to him, I can't do too much because I get a bit car sick, but I love the sensation of traveling and the idea there's nothing kind of nagging at you at home. You can hear the beep of the dishwasher. I've got the cats coming in and out. When I'm traveling, my mind does go to that different space, and I can be editing. I just love it. I love being in the car and just watching the world go by, which is a bit weird because you think it wouldn't be particularly inspiring seeing kind of cars and trees, but it's good.
It's amazing though. You mentioned in that little beach hut with bad weather, because I instantly thought, a nice relaxing seaside, but you got the dark storms and the weather. I also love that. So, is that something that you would wrap up and literally walk out to this hut and sit there in the rain?
Yeah, the huts get taken away kind of during the winter process. But if I could, I'd love one of the huts which kind of stays all year round. But even on a windy, cold day, I have to say, I do like the beach out of season anyway. So I don't mind if it's a wet and windy day. We've kind of got a little sort of gas hob where I'll kind of make my cup of coffee and sit there. And I like the fact there's not many people around, which is quite antisocial, but there we go.
That's some amazing Instagram or vlogging footage right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Hello, FJ. Did you ever reach a low point during your process? At what point you thought maybe writing wasn't for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably with the first book, like I said before, when that goes out, and at that stage you've kind of spent 2 or 3 years working on that book, you think you could probably never write a book again. I think you get to the point where it seems such an exhaustive process as a whole, from getting the agent, from just the amount of time spent on edits. I underestimated the amount of time things would take to be reworked on a structural point of view, on a line level sort of point of view. And I did really think then, what if I went and wrote kind of another book and no one liked that one as well? I just really thought I didn't know if I could invest my soul into it again. But I kind of took a break and came back refreshed. But that was definitely my low point, book one.
I certainly rushed my first book, and I was very naive to think that when I finished my first few drafts that I was done. And when it came to writing a book, oh wow, did I not realize the whole world of pain that was coming my direction in terms of editing and redrafting and
Wow.
yeah, and even marketing. So if you're writing a book for the first time, guys, when you've done a few drafts, you just begin. Just take that as a bit of a heads up.
Yeah, and I think it's actually a really good point as well I was speaking to someone the other day about kind of that first draft. I think with my first book, I worried so much about a line level. And then when you're obviously working more into the process, you realize whole sections can be taken out anyway. So if you are perfecting it to that degree, you kind of wasted a whole chunk of time, and that can kind of come in next draft. So I think when you're sort of aiming to write that first book, I really just think it's important to keep that forward momentum, keep telling yourself the story, and don't get bogged down too much on that line level, which is easier said than done.
Great advice.
So Sarah, I'm really interested. Obviously, we've mentioned you as a reader, but how are you influencing your children as readers, and what sort of things do you read with them?
Oh wow, yeah, I'm a bit of a kind of bit of a sort of not strict with books, but I have kind of from the beginning introduced sort of really story time every evening, and I have sort of limited devices, and it is a bit kind of controversial because I'm of the school that if you kind of stop something, it kind of makes people want it more. So I've tried to have a balance, but it's worked. So with my older one, it has been an experiment, and it's kind of comparing it with friends and family of a similar age. We have limited devices, and I have to say now she's at the stage I was, where I was bored, so we only didn't have quite, and it sounds terribly old, not so much kind of TV time. There was only TV on after school or at the weekends, and you were bored and you picked up a book. And my daughter has got to that stage now where she is so fluent that she is picking up books, and she's got to the stage where she can almost pick up anything up to sort of, she's 10 up to probably, I mean, she's actually read my book, but yeah, she can read more or less anything, and she's got to the stage now where she can pick a book up and with really exciting stories. I think often at kind of school age, they're not forced, but they're reading books which don't always have a great plot, and that's where a lot of the readers can fall off. So I think it's just dedicating time actually and getting them to that level of fluency, which I think we all did automatically because we just spent a lot more time reading than they do now.
Yeah. How do they react to you being a writer and obviously seeing your book out and about and stuff like that?
Yeah, that again has influenced their reading, I think. My daughter just, kind of is, my elder daughter in particular, really understands what's going on. And so she's hugely proud. And actually, she sort of started penning her own book. Really sweet.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she's working on her own kind of little mini series. But yeah, I'm really inspired by them. I think how they read, it's really interesting hearing how they describe a book versus an adult. And there's a real purity. What do they look for in a book? A really great story, really great characters, exciting adventures. There's no kind of agenda to their reading and what they want from a book. And yeah, I always compare when I see often on Twitter how a book's described, how a child would describe their favourite book. There's quite a contrast, and I think we could learn from that.
Definitely. Certainly something worth thinking about. Okay, this is a good question, and I've kind of not heard about this before, where people keep cats on the desk, and you mentioned you have cats, and the question from Life is, do you keep something on your desk or near you that keeps you writing? And apparently having a cat on your desk is productive for creativity.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, actually, I often have a cat on my desk because they do something weird. They've got to be super close to me. I have two kind of cat sisters, and they will actually curl up by my printer and sit next to me. But for me, kind of something that really keeps me writing is actually just being surrounded by books. I don't have a huge kind of workspace, but I have two shelves. And I think it was kind of what kept me going, that idea of having a published book in my hand. Yeah, I just find being surrounded by books hugely inspiring.
Oh, Anders said he thought he'd be 5 minutes early, but he's not. We apologise. We're an hour early. We tweeted about it. Very sorry. We'll have to watch it back. It's been a fantastic interview. But we are approaching the hour now, Chris. But Sarah, what we want to do just before we do wrap up is everyone's saying how proud daughter and fantastic sounds awesome. And maybe there's something we need to look at the show, a kid's idea of a story. But Sarah, you mentioned you're writing book 2. Is that in relation or kind of similar to what you've written now, or is it a different genre? What's that about?
Yeah, no, it's another thriller, and we're continuing the story of Elin. She's kind of leaving the snow, which I think at the end of book 2 she was like, "Bye, I'm out of here," which is really good. And it's set back in the UK, but it's another quite dark and creepy story. And yeah, I've pulled in some nice sort of historical elements, again, stuff I'm interested in. So we get to hear a little bit more about Elin and her relationship with Will, but we're also from the point of view of another character as well. So it's a little different, but hopefully just as creepy and dark.
When you mentioned creepy and dark, but in the UK, you said?
Yeah, in the UK.
Can we know a location or not?
Not quite yet.
Ooh.
Yeah.
North, South, Midlands?
Kind of locally to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's set kind of locally to me, so kind of a coastal setting, I'll say.
Excellent. Fantastic.
So Sarah, obviously, the sanatorium we can get pretty much everywhere, but is there anywhere in particular that you would like to recommend that people pick it up from?
Ooh, yeah, probably any independent bookstore kind of close to you. We're sadly enough in our sort of local town, we're kind of out of independent bookshops. We have a Waterstones, but yeah, a few years ago. So if you have a good independent bookstore near you, go to them. And I know actually since the pandemic, lots of independent bookstores are kind of working online. So if you can't get to one, you can always order from one.
Brilliant. And Chris has muted himself, but any further information? So obviously people may have watched this show live. They'll probably be watching it on YouTube for God knows how many years to come. But where can they find you if they're interested in obviously following your story and your writer's journey? Yeah,
so I'm on both kind of, to be fair, I'm on Facebook as well, but I'm mainly on sort of Twitter and Instagram. So on Instagram, I'm at Sarah Pearse Author. And on Twitter, I'm at Sarah V. Pearse.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
I did see before that someone had tagged you in a tweet, but it wasn't you. It was another Sarah Pearse.
Oh,
because I clicked on it and I was like, "Oh, she's coming on the show." And it was just this woman who was like a nurse in the UK.
For once, that wasn't me.
Yeah,
but that.
No.
What was the tweet?
It was in a bookshop in Waterstones, and it was like, all these amazing books have just come in, and they tagged the wrong Sarah into it. And it was just
I know, because there was bizarrely, I didn't think there would be loads of Sarah Pearse. When I started my account, there was, so I had to add in the V, which is weird, but yeah.
At least they got your name right along the same lines, you know. I mean,
vaguely similar. Yeah.
Kind of close. Anyway, all we can say, Sarah, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. And I honestly, if Chris doesn't send me that physical book in his hands, I will be getting that very soon and reading that, because I am writing something that it gives me the similar vibes in my mind. Ooh. And I need to feed off this information that you've created. So I will be reading that. And thank you so much.
For line to read yours.
Hey, it's got a lot of people from the community involved in that book. Unfortunately for some of you, that maybe the characters aren't too flattering for you, but they're not always based on your personality. Anyway, so what we can say,
I feel like you're going to get sued off the back of that.
I've already apologized to Ross online that your character is not so amazing during most of his time in the book. I apologize. It's only the namesake, all right?
Yeah, anyway, so I'm going to pretend to be your lawyer and go, stop talking.
Stop talking. Yeah, I'm going. Anyway, so I've got a concussion. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so thank you for joining us, and we're so happy that your book's done fantastically well, and we'll be following your journey, of course. And guys, please check her out. Please check out Halo's books that are free right now, all 4 of them, the whole series, which is incredible because the standard is ridiculous. So please do check those out. Dark fantasy. Is that how you describe it, Chris? Dark fantasy?
I think I heard grimdark mentioned with Halo's book as well. It is quite dark.
Really dark.
I'm prepared to be shocked. But yeah.
In the best kind of way. In the best way. So thank you very much, and we will see you on Friday with Brian Freeman, which he's written the new Bourne book, which is fantastic, and we'll be talking about that. So join us on Friday live, 8:00. Guys.
And this is a bit where we get to wave and say goodbye to everyone. So have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you on Friday.
Bye, guys.
Bye.